Juvenile justice. Juvenile justice is a specialized area of the legal system focused on addressing and managing offenses committed by individuals who are not yet considered adults under the law, typically those under 18. The juvenile justice system operates differently from the adult criminal justice system, reflecting a belief in the capacity for rehabilitation and recognizing that young people are still in cognitive, emotional, and social development. The foundation of juvenile justice lies in balancing accountability for unlawful behavior with the potential for reform. Courts and agencies involved in juvenile justice often emphasize rehabilitation over punishment, aiming to help young offenders reintegrate into society as productive, law-abiding citizens. To achieve this, the system incorporates various interventions, such as counseling, educational programs, and community service, tailored to the individual needs of the juvenile. Juvenile justice systems vary across jurisdictions. However, many share standard features, including diversion programs to steer minors away from formal court proceedings, specialized juvenile courts, and detention centers designed to provide a more rehabilitative environment than adult prisons. These institutions prioritize the welfare of the juvenile, seeking to address underlying issues such as family dynamics, education gaps, mental health challenges, and substance abuse problems that may contribute to delinquent behavior. Despite its goals, juvenile justice faces significant challenges, including racial and socioeconomic disparities, which can result in unequal treatment of youth from different backgrounds. Critics also highlight the potential for system involvement to stigmatize juveniles or expose them to negative influences inadvertently. Efforts to reform juvenile justice continue to focus on restorative practices, encouraging accountability while promoting healing for victims, offenders, and communities. The criminal justice system. The criminal justice system is a structured network of institutions and practices designed to maintain social order, enforce laws, and deliver justice to individuals who have committed crimes. It operates on the principles of fairness, accountability, and protection of society, seeking to balance the rights of the accused with the rights of victims and the community. The system encompasses three main components: law enforcement, the courts, and corrections. Law enforcement serves as the first point of contact, investigating alleged crimes, gathering evidence, and apprehending suspects. Police officers, detectives, and other law enforcement personnel ensure public safety and uphold the law. The courts provide a forum where justice is administered. Judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and juries work together to determine guilt or innocence, ensuring the accused receives a fair trial while victims have their voices heard. Through this process, laws are interpreted and applied, with outcomes ranging from acquittals to convictions. Corrections manage the consequences of criminal convictions, focusing on punishment, rehabilitation, and reintegration. This branch includes prisons, probation systems, and parole programs, which aim to reduce recidivism and promote positive change in offenders' lives. The criminal justice system faces challenges such as addressing racial disparities, maintaining ethical standards, and adapting to emerging threats like cybercrime. Its success depends on collaboration among its components and a commitment to justice and equality. By fostering trust and accountability, the system aims to ensure the safety and well-being of all members of society. Module 1. Juvenile crime. Juvenile crime, understanding its roots and impact. Juvenile crime refers to illegal acts committed by individuals, typically under 18. It encompasses a wide range of behaviors, from minor infractions such as vandalism or shoplifting to severe offenses like assault, drug trafficking, or homicide. Unlike adult offenders, juveniles are generally viewed through the lens of rehabilitation rather than punishment, recognizing their potential for change and the developmental factors that influence their behavior. The causes of juvenile crime are multifaceted, often stemming from a combination of individual, familial, and societal influences. Factors such as poverty, exposure to violence, lack of parental guidance, peer pressure, and substance abuse can all contribute to delinquent behavior. Psychological and emotional challenges, such as untreated mental health disorders or trauma, also play a significant role. Juvenile crime impacts the young individuals, their families, and their communities. It can lead to a cycle of adverse outcomes, including incarceration, disrupted education, and limited future opportunities. For society, juvenile crime represents a challenge to public safety and often necessitates significant resources for law enforcement, judicial processes, and rehabilitation programs. Addressing juvenile crime requires a holistic approach, focusing on prevention, intervention, and support. Community-based programs, counseling, education, and mentorship initiatives can help reduce risk factors and foster positive development. By addressing the root causes of juvenile crime and providing pathways for rehabilitation, society can work towards creating safer communities and brighter futures for its youth. Understanding juvenile court. The juvenile court system is a specialized branch of the judiciary dedicated to addressing legal matters involving minors under a certain age, typically 18, who are accused of violating laws or requiring court intervention due to neglect, abuse, or other circumstances. Its fundamental principle prioritizes rehabilitation over punishment, reflecting society's recognition that young offenders can reform and develop. Juvenile courts differ significantly from adult courts in structure, processes, and goals. Hearings are typically less formal and closed to the public to protect the minor's identity and future opportunities. The terminology used also reflects the system's rehabilitative approach, as terms like delinquent act replace crime, and proceedings focus on the best interests of the child rather than solely on punitive measures. The court's jurisdiction encompasses various issues, including delinquency cases, status offenses, and dependency matters. Delinquency cases involve minors who commit acts that would be considered crimes if committed by adults. Status offenses, such as truancy or underage drinking, are behaviors deemed unlawful solely due to the individual's age. Dependency cases address the welfare of children who are abused, neglected, or abandoned. Judges in juvenile courts often work alongside social workers, probation officers, and mental health professionals to craft individualized plans for the minor, incorporating education, therapy, community service, or other rehabilitative measures. Focusing on reform rather than retribution, the juvenile court system aims to provide young individuals with opportunities to correct their behavior and reintegrate as productive members of society. Juvenile court jurisdiction by state. Juvenile court jurisdiction in the United States is defined by state laws, which determine the age range of individuals eligible to be tried in juvenile courts, the types of cases these courts handle, and the procedures they follow. Typically, juvenile courts oversee cases involving minors who have committed delinquent acts or status offenses or need supervision due to neglect or abuse. The upper age limit for juvenile court jurisdiction varies by state, but is generally set at 17 years old. In some states, individuals aged 17 are tried as adults, while others extend juvenile jurisdiction to include offenders up to age 18. States also differ in how they handle serious offenses committed by juveniles. Many states have provisions for transferring juveniles to adult court based on factors such as the severity of the crime, the offender's age, and prior criminal history. These transfers may occur through judicial waiver, prosecutorial discretion, or automatic statutes for specific offenses. California's juvenile court jurisdiction generally covers individuals up to 17, sometimes older for specific cases. A 16-year-old falls well within the juvenile court's jurisdiction and would most likely be processed in juvenile court unless the crime is severe enough to warrant transfer to adult court. Juvenile courts also have distinct procedures aimed at rehabilitation rather than punishment. Judges often focus on interventions like counseling, education, and community service. However, disparities in how juvenile laws are applied, particularly regarding race and socioeconomic status, have led to debates about fairness and the effectiveness of the juvenile justice system. Measuring juvenile crime. Understanding juvenile crime requires careful measurement through three fundamental approaches: official records, self-report surveys, and victimization surveys. Each method provides unique insights into the nature, prevalence, and trends of criminal behavior among youth. Official records, such as those maintained by law enforcement agencies and courts, serve as the most formal measure of juvenile crime. These records track arrests, charges, and adjudications, offering reliable data for understanding crime rates and patterns. However, official documents are limited to incidents reported to or discovered by authorities, leaving unreported or undetected crimes unaccounted for. This can lead to underestimation, particularly for less visible offenses. Self-report surveys ask juveniles directly about their involvement in criminal activities. These surveys provide a broader perspective, capturing data on offenses that may never have been reported or recorded. By encouraging anonymity, self-report surveys often elicit honest responses, shedding light on minor offenses or risk behaviors that might not appear in official statistics. Despite their utility, these surveys rely on the honesty and self-awareness of respondents, which can introduce inaccuracies. Victimization surveys focus on crime victims' experiences, collecting data on both reported and unreported crimes. They highlight the impact of juvenile crime on communities and help identify patterns of victimization. However, these surveys depend on victims' willingness to report and their ability to recall events accurately, which may skew results. Understanding delinquency prevention programs. Delinquency prevention programs are structured initiatives designed to reduce the occurrence of juvenile delinquency by addressing its root causes before problematic behaviors emerge. These programs aim to intervene early in the lives of at-risk youth, providing them with support, guidance, and opportunities to make constructive choices. Delinquency is often the result of complex social, environmental, and personal factors, including poverty, lack of education, family dysfunction, and peer influence. Prevention programs seek to mitigate these risks by fostering environments that promote positive development, resilience, and community engagement. The philosophy underlying many delinquency prevention programs is grounded in the idea that early intervention can significantly alter a young person's life trajectory. Rather than focusing solely on punitive measures, these programs emphasize a proactive and rehabilitative approach. This philosophy is rooted in the belief that children and adolescents are impressionable and capable of change when provided with the right resources and support systems. Prevention programs aim to identify risk factors and build protective factors that buffer against delinquent behavior. Protective factors often include strong family bonds, supportive adult relationships, involvement in school or community activities, and the development of skills that encourage self-discipline and decision-making. A key element of delinquency prevention is addressing the social environment that influences youth behavior. Programs often focus on enhancing community resources, fostering safe neighborhoods, and creating access to educational and recreational opportunities. Additionally, many programs operate on restorative justice, emphasizing repairing harm and restoring relationships rather than punishing individuals. By involving families, schools, and communities in the prevention process, these initiatives strive to create a network of support that empowers youth to make positive choices. Juvenile court relinquishment to adult court. The process by which a juvenile court relinquishes jurisdiction over a juvenile and transfers their case to adult court is a critical aspect of the justice system. This transition often occurs through waivers, transfers, or remands, which vary depending on the jurisdiction's legal framework. Waivers to adult court typically involve a juvenile court judge reviewing the circumstances of the case and deciding whether the juvenile should be tried as an adult. Factors considered include the severity of the offense, the juvenile's age, prior delinquency history, and the perceived ability of the juvenile justice system to rehabilitate the offender. In some jurisdictions, legislative statutes mandate the automatic transfer of certain offenses, such as violent felonies, to adult court, bypassing judicial discretion. These are known as statutory exclusions. Other cases might involve prosecutorial discretion, where prosecutors determine whether to file charges in juvenile or adult court based on the nature of the offense and the defendant's background. Remand hearings occur when the juvenile court formally reviews the case to determine the appropriateness of transferring jurisdiction. During these hearings, the court evaluates evidence, including psychological assessments and testimony, to decide whether the juvenile poses a significant risk to public safety or is unlikely to benefit from juvenile rehabilitative services. Once the decision is made to transfer the case, the juvenile is tried in adult court, where they face the same legal procedures and potential penalties as adult offenders. This process underscores the balance between the justice system's public safety and rehabilitative goals. Legislative waiver in the juvenile court system. A legislative waiver is a statutory provision that mandates the transfer of certain juvenile cases to adult criminal court without requiring a judicial hearing to determine the appropriateness of the transfer. This legal mechanism reflects the intersection of public safety concerns and the evolving perception of juvenile accountability. Legislative waivers are often applied to cases involving severe crimes such as homicide, sexual assault, or armed robbery, where lawmakers have predetermined that the gravity of the offense warrants adult prosecution. The legislative waiver process is rooted in the belief that certain offenses demonstrate a level of criminal intent or societal harm incompatible with the rehabilitative goals of the juvenile justice system. By bypassing the traditional discretionary role of juvenile court judges, these waivers create a streamlined approach to handling cases deemed exceptional. However, this approach has sparked significant debate, as critics argue it undermines the individualized assessments that are a hallmark of juvenile justice. Proponents of legislative waivers emphasize the deterrent effect and the importance of ensuring public safety. At the same time, opponents highlight concerns about disproportionate impacts on minority youth, as well as the potential for exposing juveniles to the harsher environment of adult facilities. Furthermore, the developmental differences between juveniles and adults raise questions about the ethical implications of imposing adult penalties on younger offenders. Legislative waivers represent a complex balance between protecting societal interests and maintaining a commitment to justice and rehabilitation for youth. Probation in the juvenile court system. Probation is a critical component of the juvenile court system, offering young offenders an opportunity for rehabilitation within their communities while under court-ordered supervision. It is an alternative to detention or incarceration, emphasizing guidance, accountability, and support to help juveniles reintegrate into society successfully. Probation is typically granted to juveniles who have committed minor offenses or demonstrate potential for reform, balancing the need for public safety to foster positive behavioral changes. In the juvenile court system, probation begins with a court order specifying the terms and conditions the young person must follow. These conditions often include attending school, counseling, or community service, avoiding specific individuals or places, and complying with curfews. Juvenile probation officers are central in monitoring compliance, offering guidance, and connecting the youth and their families with supportive resources. The rehabilitative nature of probation aligns with the philosophy of the juvenile justice system, which prioritizes treatment and education over punishment. By addressing the root causes of delinquent behavior, such as family dysfunction, substance abuse, or lack of educational opportunities, probation can reduce recidivism and promote long-term change. Juvenile placement and emerging trends in rehabilitation. Juvenile placement refers to assigning young offenders to specific programs or facilities designed to address their rehabilitation needs, protect society, and ensure accountability for delinquent behavior. These placements range from secure detention centers to community-based programs, depending on the offense's severity and the youth's needs. Traditionally, juvenile placement focused on punitive measures and large-scale institutional settings. However, recent years have witnessed a paradigm shift toward approaches prioritizing rehabilitation, education, and individualized care. A notable trend in juvenile placement is the increasing emphasis on personalized services tailored to smaller groups of offenders. Research underscores that rehabilitation is more effective in environments that focus on the unique circumstances of each youth, including their mental health, education, family dynamics, and social environment. More minor, community-based facilities are replacing more extensive institutional settings as they offer a more nurturing environment and facilitate closer relationships between staff and juveniles. These smaller placements often include therapeutic interventions, mentoring programs, and restorative justice practices that actively engage young offenders in making amends to victims and their communities. Another significant trend is the reduction in overall juvenile incarceration rates. Efforts to divert youth from formal detention into alternative programs are gaining traction, emphasizing treatment over punishment. Evidence suggests that community-based services, such as counseling and skill-building initiatives, are more effective in reducing recidivism and fostering long-term positive outcomes. These shifts reflect a growing consensus that a holistic and rehabilitative approach is essential for transforming young lives and promoting public safety. Understanding juvenile gangs and their connection to race and ethnicity. Juvenile gangs are organized groups of young individuals who engage in illegal activities and often form a distinct subculture with shared identities, values, and goals. These groups are typically characterized by their territorial nature, use of symbols or logos, and loyalty to fellow members. Gangs often provide a sense of belonging and identity for youth who may feel marginalized or disconnected from traditional societal structures. Membership can offer protection, social recognition, or economic opportunities, but it also exposes young individuals to violence and criminal behavior, often resulting in long-term negative consequences. Race and ethnicity play a significant role in shaping the dynamics of juvenile gangs. Socioeconomic disparities and systemic inequalities in marginalized communities often create conditions conducive to gang formation. Youth from historically disadvantaged racial and ethnic groups may face limited access to education, employment, and social support, driving some to seek community and survival through gang affiliation. Additionally, racial and ethnic identity can influence the cultural symbols, language, and rituals within gangs, reinforcing a shared sense of purpose or opposition to perceived societal injustices. Delinquent gangs, definition and types. Delinquent gangs are organized groups of individuals, typically adolescents or young adults, who engage in criminal activities and deviant behaviors. These groups often form in response to social, economic, or cultural factors and provide their members with a sense of identity, belonging, and protection. Members are usually bound by shared loyalty, rituals, and symbols, reinforcing their collective identity and facilitating participation in illegal activities. Gangs often operate within specific territories and maintain their dominance through violence or intimidation, contributing to social instability and crime within their communities. There are two primary types of delinquent gangs, social and criminal. Social gangs focus primarily on group cohesion and identity, often engaging in minor deviant behaviors rather than serious criminal activities. These groups prioritize socialization and camaraderie, with criminal acts, if any, as a secondary function. Members typically engage in behaviors such as vandalism, underage drinking, or truancy, which reflect a desire for peer acceptance rather than substantial financial gain or control. In contrast, criminal gangs are organized around profit-driven activities, such as drug trafficking, extortion, or theft. These gangs are more structured and hierarchical, often resembling criminal enterprises. Their operations are motivated by material gain and members are frequently involved in violent acts to control territories or settle disputes. Unlike social gangs, criminal gangs pose a more significant threat to public safety and law enforcement due to their organized and systematic nature. Rampage killings, an exploration of their nature and impact. Rampage killings are a form of mass violence characterized by indiscriminate attacks on groups of people, often carried out by a single perpetrator. Unlike other forms of homicide, rampage killings typically lack a specific target, and the victims are chosen at random or are simply present in a particular location. These events are frequently marked by a high number of casualties, creating a devastating impact on communities and drawing intense media and public attention. The motivations behind rampage killings vary, but often include personal grievances, a desire for notoriety, or psychological factors such as untreated mental illness. In some cases, perpetrators see their actions as a way to express their frustrations or to retaliate against perceived injustices. The choice of location, such as schools, workplaces, or public venues, is often symbolic or strategic, aimed at maximizing visibility and casualties. Rampage killings have profound social and psychological consequences. Survivors and victims' families face lasting trauma, while communities struggle to heal from the sense of vulnerability and fear these acts create. Media coverage of such events often sparks debates about gun control, mental health resources, and societal influences, including the role of violent media and social isolation. Mental disorders in juvenile offenders. Juvenile offenders often face a complex interplay of psychological, environmental, and social challenges, with mental disorders being a significant factor influencing their behavior. Among the most prevalent mental health conditions in this population are conduct disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. These disorders can manifest in behaviors that lead to conflicts with the law and complicate rehabilitation efforts. Conduct disorder is common in juvenile offenders and is characterized by persistent patterns of aggressive and antisocial behavior. Youth with this condition may show a disregard for rules, property, or the rights of others, leading to confrontations with legal systems. ADHD, another frequent diagnosis, contributes to impulsivity, poor attention regulation, and difficulties in decision-making. These traits can result in risky behaviors, poor peer relationships, and an inability to adhere to societal norms. Depression is also widespread among juvenile offenders, often linked to adverse childhood experiences such as abuse, neglect, or family dysfunction. Feelings of hopelessness, irritability, and a lack of motivation can impair decision-making and increase the likelihood of delinquent acts. PTSD is prevalent in those who have experienced trauma, including violence or instability in their environments. It can manifest as hypervigilance, aggression, or emotional withdrawal, further complicating their interactions with others and the justice system. Understanding risk and protective factors in juvenile delinquency. A combination of risk and protective factors across various domains influences juvenile delinquency. These include individual, family, peer, and community influences. Understanding these factors is critical for addressing and preventing youth involvement in delinquent behavior. The individual domain encompasses personal characteristics and behaviors that can either increase or reduce the likelihood of delinquency. Risk factors may include impulsivity, low self-control, or a history of aggression. Conversely, protective factors such as strong problem-solving skills, positive self-esteem, and effective coping strategies can shield youth from negative influences and promote resilience. The family domain plays a pivotal role in shaping a young person's behavior. A chaotic home environment, lack of supervision, or parental neglect may heighten the risk of delinquent actions. However, supportive family relationships, consistent discipline, and parental involvement can act as protective solid factors, fostering a sense of security and guiding youth toward positive choices. Peers exert significant influence during adolescence. Associating with delinquent peers often increases the likelihood of engaging in similar behaviors, while maintaining friendships with prosocial peers can serve as a protective factor. Social skills and the ability to resist peer pressure further reduce risks associated with negative influences. The community domain also impacts juvenile delinquency. Exposure to high-crime neighborhoods, poverty, or inadequate educational opportunities can increase risks. In contrast, access to community resources, mentorship programs, and safe environments can support positive development.